So a couple of things, and then we'll go into the Q&A. Do I sound like I have an echo?
Yes.
Can we fix the sound? Does that sound better?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. So from Buffalo and Kansas City to Uvalde and Monterey Park, we have seen the epidemic of gun violence tearing apart communities nationwide, leaving empty seats at dining room tables across the country. The president and the vice president have spent countless hours with families who have lost loved ones to the senseless violence. And they all say the same thing: do something. These same families and other survivors of gun violence turned their pain into purpose. They organized, demanded action, and marched for their lives. And thanks to their collective efforts, President Biden signed the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the most significant gun safety law in nearly 30 years. Today, we are building on that progress and announcing a new rule that saves lives by requiring background checks for all gun dealers engaged in the business of firearms dealing, including for guns sold at gun shows and online. This new rule implements the only significant expansion of background check requirements since then Senator Biden helped shepherd the Brady bill over the finish line in 1993. Today's new action furthers the Biden-Harris administration's historic efforts to stop the illegal flow of guns and hold those who supply firearms used in crime accountable. But there's still much work to be done. President Biden and Vice President Harris continue to call on Congress to enact universal background checks and finish the job. Now, as you all have reported overnight, Russia launched another large round of aerial assaults against Ukraine's energy grid as Vladimir Putin's continue to try to break the spirit of the Ukrainian people and plunge them into darkness. Russia struck the largest power plant in Kyiv Oblast, as well as power facilities in 5 other regions across Ukraine. As President Zelensky said in the recent days, Ukraine needs more air defenses and interceptors to protect its people and critical infrastructure against Russian missiles and Iranian-supplied drones. We need the House of Representatives, Republicans specifically, obviously, but the House of Representatives, to take urgent action to pass the bipartisan National Security Supplemental Bill so we can send Ukraine more air defenses. And let me correct myself. It's actually the House of Representatives. We need the Speaker to put that bill on the floor because we know we would get overwhelming support from Republicans and Democrats, obviously. So we need to see that bill put on the floor. That was passed overwhelmingly in the Senate. The strikes in Ukraine over the past 24 hours are another terrible reminder that Ukraine's need is critical. And now turning over to Gaza, I wanted to provide an update on our efforts to do all we can to increase the amount of humanitarian assistance reaching Gaza and ease the humanitarian suffering. As you know, when President Biden last spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu just last week, he was clear that Israel must announce and implement a series of specific, concrete, measurable steps to address humanitarian suffering. The past few days have shown some promise. Israel made the commitment to open the Ashdod port for the direct delivery of assistance into Gaza, to open a new crossing for a new route for assistance to reach North Gaza, and to significantly increase deliveries from Jordan directly into Gaza. And over the past few days, over 1,000 trucks loaded with humanitarian aid have gotten into Gaza, and with over 300 trucks going into Gaza yesterday alone. That's good progress, but it's still not enough, and we hope to see the progress continue and accelerate. This afternoon, President Biden will welcome President Marcos of the Philippines to the White House for his second meeting at the White House in as many years. I know the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, spoke to this on Monday, but I will reiterate what he laid out as well, which is that The president later will host the first ever trilateral leaders summit between the United States, Japan, and Philippines. During President Biden's meeting with President Marcos, the two presidents will mark the unprecedented strength of the alliance between the United States and the Philippines. The leaders will discuss initiatives to enhance economic and energy security, bolster maritime cooperation, invest in critical infrastructure, and deepen people-to-people ties. And President Biden will reinforce the ironclad U.S. alliance commitments to the Philippines. Following the meeting, the president will host the historic Trilateral Leaders Summit as leading maritime democracies. The United States, Japan, and the Philippines share a joint vision for the future of the Indo-Pacific, and with this leader-level trilateral, we are taking our cooperation to new heights. Our national security advisors met in Tokyo last June to initiate our trilateral cooperation, and officials from across our three governments have met on topics as varied as economic security and maritime cooperation. Today, the leaders will announce new initiatives to accelerate and surge high-quality infrastructure investments in the Philippines, enhance energy security, deepen maritime cooperation, and strengthen partnerships on technology and cybersecurity. Our three countries embark on this new era of trilateral cooperation as trusted, equal partners guided by shared values and an unwavering commitment to a free, open, peaceful, and prosperous Indo-Pacific. With that, Darlene, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you. To jump off of what you were saying in your topper about Gaza, the USAID Administrator, Samantha Power, has said that she accepts as credible reports that famine is already underway in northern Gaza. Does the President and the White House share that assessment? And if so, you were talking about the progress is good, but more needs to be done. What more can be done?
Exactly. The progress is good. More needs to be done. I talked about the commitment that Israel had, the Prime Minister gave to the President just last week, and I talked about the port, and I talked about the new border crossings in northern Gaza. We need to see that open up, that move forward. But we've seen some progress, right? The opening of more routes and also more trucks, as I just laid out. We've seen more than 1,000 trucks in the last 3 days. Look, specifically to Samantha Powers and her comments, our understanding is that the latest reporting from the integrated food security phase classification indicates that the famine is imminent in Gaza, and that's why we're trying to do everything that we can to uptick, obviously, the humanitarian aid. We know how dire the situation is in Gaza, so we are certainly deeply concerned about these reports, and so we've been working around the clock to get more of that aid into Gaza, and so we're going to continue to do this. We're going to continue to push Israel to increase the flow that is getting into Gaza, and like I said, I've laid out their commitments. There are two other ways that we want to see their commitment continue, which is that port that I just mentioned at the top and just moments ago, and so also those the routes in northern Gaza. So there's more work to be done, but again, 1,000 trucks over the last 3 days is an improvement. It's good promise. We need to see more.
Second, was there any reaction from the president to O.J. Simpson's death? Do you know if they ever crossed paths? If so, how, when?
So I'll say this: our thoughts are with his families during this difficult time. Obviously, with his family and loved ones. And I'll say this: I know that they have asked for some privacy, and so we're going to respect that. I'll just leave it there.
Iran is threatening a significant attack against Israel. With all of the U.S. assets in the region, will the U.S. provide assistance in thwarting this attack? How is the U.S. preparing to respond?
So look, you heard from the president directly yesterday. He mentioned this at the top of his press conference and laid out our concerns, certainly, about these threats that are being made. And he made very clear as well that America's support for Israel's security is ironclad, especially against these threats that's coming from Iran and their proxies. And so the president made that clear as well when he spoke to President Netanyahu just last week, as I mentioned moments ago. I want to be really careful. I'm not going to get into operational procedures from here. Beyond that, we've made ourselves very, very clear. The president made himself very clear just yesterday, and so just don't have anything else to add beyond that.
But we certainly have done joint strikes against Iranian proxies in the recent weeks and months. Should we be braced for joint strikes against, in response to an Iranian strike against Israel?
I want to be super mindful. I don't want to get into hypotheticals here. What we have made very clear, Obviously, we've seen the threats coming from Iran, and so we have made ourselves very clear where we stand in supporting Israel's security. That is ironclad. That does not change. I'm just not going to get into details about our operational procedures from here.
Just one more on this. So General Kurilla is in the Middle East. He's making a stop in Israel. He's reportedly there to help, coordinate with Israel ahead of this expected attack. What does that coordination look like? What does that mean exactly?
I will refer you to SETCOM.